Okay. Today's daf is Masechta Bava Kama Daf Vav, and we are beginning by Daf Hey Amid Beis. Now, this is the most important Gemara that we're going to learn. It's very easy. The first, it's just important as far as information is concerned. We learned yesterday when we left off with a question. We know that the Torah gave you examples of the boar, the case of the shar with goring, the case of the shar trampling, the case of the ox eating, and fire. What the Gemara just got through saying is that the Torah could have just given you one example of bar and another example of anything else, and I would have figured out any type of nezek from there, because obviously when the Torah says an ox does damage, you have to pay. It doesn't mean just an ox. If you have a dog, it will be the same thing. So all the situations of way an animal can damage, the Torah didn't have to spell it out for you. The Torah just would have written a case of one example, and then put the bar in between, and that you'll figure out everything else. So the Gemara is left off with the question: what is the purpose of the Torah writing all these examples out? So the Gemara says, Lihil Chosein, there are special halachos that you learn. There are special halachos that are important for each of the nezeks. Karen, the main reason that the Torah wrote Karen, the horn, goring, lechalek, to differentiate betama lemuedes, between the first time it does it, that you only pay half, and half the damages. The mu'edis, if it did it the fourth time and you're forewarned, then you pay 100%. Shein v'regel. Why did the Torah write shein and regel? Lepoitrim b'shus rabim, that you're exempt if an animal trampled something in a reshus rabim, or ate somebody else's fruits in a reshus rabim, you're exempt, because everybody has a right to use the reshus rabim. And let's just see the psukim. The psukim says, ubir b'stei acher, you did it in your friend's field, somebody else's field, but in the reshus rabim you're exempt. Bar is a very shocking thing. I want to point this out to you. The pit. Imagine somebody digs a pit. If I dig a pit on Central Avenue, if a car comes there and falls in the hole and gets destroyed along with the passenger, then I'm totally exempt, because bar, the Torah tells you that bar is unique. Bar is only if v'nafal shavi, you can see it on the screen here, v'nafal shabashar achamar. You dig a pit and you cause damage for an ox or for a donkey. And we learn from that lifter boy is a kalim, that you're exempt if anything kalim that get destroyed in that bar, you're exempt from that. Only an ox and a donkey you're obligated for, any animal. So that's why the Torah had to write the story about a bar. Well, Rabbi Yehuda, according to Rabbi Yehuda, according to Rabbi Yehuda, you're obligated if a keli falls into a bar, if a bicycle falls into a bar, according to Rabbi Yehuda, you're obligated to pay. So the point of writing the story of bar in the Torah is to teach you the halacha of lifter boyas adam, that if a man falls into the pit and he dies, the one that dug the bar is not obligated to pay. Why did the Torah write adam? If a man damages somebody else, if a guy gets into a fight and breaks somebody's hand and totally makes it useless, to make him obligated to pay, besides nezek, the damage, he has to pay tsar, ripui, shavis, and boishes, the four other things, which is embarrassment, the loss of wages, the pain involved. So that's why you get abar dvar. Now, Aish, why did the Torah write fire? Very interesting. A fire, you're obligated, if you start a fire, you're obligated to pay the damages, but lifter boyas a talmun, you're exempt from paying if something was hidden in sight. In other words, let's say you had a computer in the field and it got destroyed because of the fire, you're not obligated to pay, because the computer is somewhere hidden amongst the tall grains of wheat. And therefore the Torah only said that only if it burns the tall grains of wheat, you're obligated to pay, but nothing that's hidden in the field. And according to Rabbi Yehuda, that who obligates you to pay something hidden in the fire, what's that? What is it coming to include? Why do the Torah write the obligation of Eish? If you're obligated to pay for Tamun, for hidden things, what's the new halacha of Eish? We go to Daf Bava Amud Aleph. That means that if it scorched another's plowed field, or in a case in which it singed stones, even though the damaged object remains intact and is not consumed by fire, one is still liable for the damages. Because you would think that only if you totally destroyed something, you're obligated to pay, like everything else. Like when an animal eats fruits, so it totally destroys the fruit. But if by fire, the chiddush is that even singeing something and not totally destroying it, you're still obligated to pay. So that's the story of why the Torah wrote out all the different types of damages explicitly in the Pesukim to teach you halachas that are associated with each one of them. Now the Gemara says, Hatzad Shava Shebehen. The Mishnah says that there is a tzad shava. There's an underlying denominator between all the Ba'avos Nazikin. So why did the Mishnah say that there's an underlying denominator? So it must mean that there's something not written in the Mishnah, and it's learned out from two of them. It's similar to two of them, and therefore you'll add that as a possible damage. So the Gemara asks, Latuyamai, what's not written in the Mishnah? And we're going to add that into the Mishnah. So the Gemara gives you a couple of answers. Amar Abaya comes to teach you a case. Latuye comes to teach you a case of Avnoi Sakino Masoi. A person left a stone, a knife, or a load. Shanichem Baresh Gaga. You left it on your roof, right? The city gives tickets if you don't have your roof intact. Anyway, so you left all this stone on your roof. And all of a sudden a wind came, the naflu baruch matsuya, a normal wind came and blew it to the street. V'hizika, and it caused damage. So therefore, that's not written in the Mishnah, and that's a case that it's similar to two of those items. So the Gemara says, why? What's the story? How did it happen? If as it fell, as it was falling off the roof, it hit somebody, hani eish, that's fire. And if it did damage that way, it's the same way of fire. What is fire? Maishno eish. What makes fire different? The koyach acham urav. Eish is really another force that causes it to spread. Uma maincha ushmirasan alecha. You started it, and you're obligated to watch it. Hani nami. This case also is very similar to eish. It's not like you need anything. You need another mazik to learn it out from. It's exactly the same as eish. You left it on the roof. How did it fall off the roof? Another force blew it off the roof. It's your money. You put the stone on the roof, and you have to watch it. So that's not the case. It after it stayed on the floor, it fell off the roof to the floor, and somebody tripped over it. So, Frank Gemara, after it fell off the roof, what happened? If you made it hefker, the stone you said you made it hefker, so bein l'ra, bein l'shmuel, hainu bar. That's the exact same thing, a bar. I mean, what is a bar? Maishno bar, shekain tchilasan asiyasan nezek. That when you dig a bar that causes somebody to trip or fall into a pit, the act of creating the bar is a damage waiting to happen. It's your money, because once you dig a bar, it's like you own it. And you have to watch it. Harinami, these also, when it's on the roof, when you put it there on the roof, it's almost guaranteed that it's going to fall down onto the street. So its creation was created to cause a damage. It's your money, and you have to watch it. So it's like bar. So it's not a novel nezik. It's just a subcategory of bar. If you didn't mafker it, well, according to Rav, if you're not mafker it, it's actually Keren, but it's not like Keren, because Keren is actually a balchai and is a live animal. It's similar to Keren and bar. But according to Shmuel, if you're not mafker it still has a din of bar. The Oma Kula Mebar Lamanu is all considered like bar when you don't mafker it, Hainu bar. It's the same thing at bar. So what the Gemara's question is, according to Shmuel, what is the tzad hashava that I need two of those mazikim to add something that was not written in the Mishnah? Answers the Gemara, L'oilim dafkarin. Really, you are mafker it. In other words, the wind blew this stone or load off the roof that you left, and it fell into the street, and you were mafker it. So the Gemara asked before, but isn't that exactly the same as bar? So it's not so. It's not similar to bar. Malabar shekain ein koyach acham uraboy. There is no other outside force that caused it to happen. A bar, it was dug up by a human being who went on Queens Boulevard and dug a bar. So there, it was the human that created it. Timer bahani, but this, maybe you wouldn't be obligated to pay because shekoyach acham urav behem, because another force made it into a bar. Another force blew it, a wind force blew it off the roof and landed it into the street. So maybe you wouldn't be obligated. So therefore, for bar alone, I wouldn't say that this is a told of bar, but eish techiyah. But together with eish will prove it, and therefore eish is a type of nezek which has a koyach achar, which has another wind force that makes it into a nezek. So with eish and bar, with eish, I would say that you would be obligated to pay, but it's very different than eish. Mala eish came darke leil chazik. The Aish actually keeps moving, and as it's moving, it's doing damage. But here, this fell off the roof and stays in one place. So bar techiyach. So bar will prove it that it's a nezek. So from the combination of bar and Aish, I know this case of leaving a load on the roof and it falls into the street that you're obligated to pay. Because din, it goes back and forth because of the common denominator between bar and Aish. And therefore, it's probably that this thing will be a subcategory of each, of bar and aish, and probably have the leniencies of each of them, of bar, and it'll have the leniencies of aish. Rava gives you another case, what the Mishnah is trying to add. Latuya bar, hamaskalgel baragli odam baragli behema. A bar, let's say it's including something that's, let's say you left an item in the street, whatever it is, an item that somebody can trip over, but where you left it, it got kicked around and was moved into another place through, let's say, a human kicked it somewhere else, or an animal kicked it to another part of the street. And therefore, you'll still be obligated to pay because this is a bar that moved. Hey, Chidami, what's the case? If it's a type of load that you left in the street and you mafker it, this is a regular bar. It's destined to do damage, or shmirasan alecha, and you have to watch it. When you put it on the roof, it's destined to do damage, and you should watch it. If you weren't mafker it, it still has a din of bar, even though you don't make it free. You actually want to retrieve it. Bar, it's bar. So in other words, why is it any different if a person left an item on the street which somebody could trip over, and another human kicked it away to another part of the street, or another animal kicked it to another part of the street, and that's a big novelty that you'll be obligated to pay. And that's what the Mishnah is saying, because of it needs a combination of two nizakim to obligate you to pay. It's really this similar to bar. Answers the Gemara, no, you will mafker it, but bar. It's not similar to a bar. Malamar, a regular bar, somebody dug it up. Shekay massive garmaloi. Your actions caused it to happen. Guy dug it up. Toime bahani, but this she'ain massive garmaloi, that your action didn't cause it in its new location. How did it get to its new location? Somebody else kicked it there, or an animal kicked it there. So it's a little bit different than a bar. So I might think you're not obligated to pay. Shor yachia. So shor will prove it, because shor is something that you own. It's not you that's doing the damage. It's something that you own, and therefore you're obligated to pay. So also by this, you would be obligated to pay, even though you didn't cause it to be in its new location. But then you can argue, but it's not similar to a shor, because a shor is an animal that constantly moves, and as it's moving, it's destined to do damage. Here, it remains in one place. Bar so in that way, it's similar to bar. So v'chazar din, it's similar to the denominator that's both in bar and both in shor, that since these are nizakim and you're obligated to pay, so also a new case, bar hamizgalgel b'raglei odem ragel mehema, an object that moved because of somebody kicked it, or an animal kicked it, but you left it there, you would still be mechayev if on any damages that happens because of that original item that you left. Rav Ada bar Ahava gives another case that it's not written in the Mishnah, and it's a very interesting case that you can see how the ancient people lived. There was they used to latuye the Tanya. The Brisa says the following case: the Chachamim said that kol eilish amru paiskim b'visayim v'garfim arasayim. You could open your gutters and drain sewage from a person had like a little outhouse, and you had to empty the sewer, this dirty water. You could empty it in the street, and they allowed people to do that. Chachamim allowed people to do that. But in the summertime, you have no permission to empty your junky water, and flush out your gutters and leaders. You have no permission to do that in the summer times because the streets are clean. But in the wintertime, where the streets are dirty anyway, and not many people are walking, Yesh Lem Rishus, the Chachamim gave you permission to empty that into the street, right? But Afal Pisha Rishus, even though you have permission to empty it into the street, Im Hiziku, if somebody got damaged, somebody's suit got dirty or whatever, or slipped, Chayav L'Shalom, you're obligated to pay. So now, the Gemara, so this is not written in the Mishnah, and it's a damage that if it happened, you're obligated to pay. It's not written in the Mishnah. So hey chidami, what's the case? Is it as it's being emptied and being flushed out of the system and it's moving? It's you caused it to move, so of course you're obligated to pay because you yourself are doing the damage. So that's not a novel thing. No, it's after you emptied it and it's remained resting in the street, so then you're obligated to pay if some damage happens. So the Gemara says again, hey chidami, if you made it hefker, the dirty water you made hefker, bein Rav, bein Shmuel, haine bar. Rav and Shmuel both agree that's a bar, and this will be a tolda bar. So of course you're obligated to pay. A bar is originally created to do damage, and you have to watch it. So here also, by you emptying your dirty water into the street, obviously it's going to do damage, so therefore you're obligated to pay. So it must be a tolda bar. So I don't need it's told a bar, so simple. Of course, you're obligated to pay. Elder the Royaf green, even if you didn't mafker it and you want to retrieve that water, whatever reason, the Shmuel Shmuel says it's still considered a bar. Hainu bar, it's the told of bar. So again, what is the novel idea of the Mishnah adding if it's talking about a person emptying his sewage and his gutters and leaders into the street? Answers the Gemara la'olam dafkarinhu. Really, you are mafkarit. V'loy damel bar, and it's not like a bar because malabar a bar is different. Shekain loy brushus. You had no permission to dig a pit in the middle of the street, in the middle of Queens Boulevard. You can't dig a pit there. So therefore, over there, you're obligated to pay. Toime bahani, but I wouldn't say these ones, dibrashus, because the Chachamim allowed you to create that bar, because that's how the people lived. You had to have at one time a year where you could empty your dirty water into the street. So it's not really similar to bar. So now we go to Amar Beis, but shor yechia, an ox will prove it. An ox, you have ox can walk in the street. So also, and if it does damage, you're obligated to pay. So if you put it into the street, you're obligated to pay. So, but it's not an ox because a shor is constantly walking and it's doing damage. But here, once you put it in the street, it's not going anywhere. So then it's similar to bar to chiach. So it's similar to bar and it's similar to shar. The chazar din, it go back and forth. And therefore, that's another example of the Mishnah, that it's not part of the four Nizakim, but from two of the Nizakim, you learn the case of from bar and shar, you learn the case of the emptying sewage into the street, that once it's stationary in its place, you're obligated to pay if someone gets damaged. Ravina Amar Rav Giva gives you the final case of the Mishnah. It comes to include the following case in the Mishnah. A wall or a tree that fell into Rishus Harabim. Let's say a wind blew down a wall or a tree and it fell into the public domain and did damage. You're not obligated to pay because it's not your fault. A hurricane came and blew the tree down. No problem. But if the Chachamim, if the Bezdin saw that it was a shaky tree or shaky wall, and they gave you so they told you demolish the wall or cut the tree down because it's going to eventually fall. Let's say it fell before the time was up, and did damage, pati, you're not obligated to pay. But if it fell after the due date, in other words, they gave you, let's say, 30 days to take down the wall, and you just did not take down the wall, and it fell and did damage in the Rishus Harabim, you're obligated to pay because you were forewarned that this is a shaky tree or a shaky wall. Hey Chidomim, what's the case? When it fell down, you were mafkarit, bein ra bein shmuel bar. That's bar. Ma'ishno bar da zeikem motzishim rasan alecha. Harinama zeikem motzishim rasan alecha. Bar is common, although not as common as regal, but bar is common. When you dig a pit, most likely somebody's going to get damaged, and you're obligated to watch it. Hariname zeikem motzi. A shaky wall or a shaky tree that's in your property, it's most likely going to fall down, and therefore shmurasan alecha, you have to watch it. Either loyafkarin, if you're not mafka the tree that fell into the Rishus Harabim or the wall that fell into the Rishus Harabim, the Shmuel da'amakulim bebar lamanu hanibar. Even Shmuel will say this is similar to bar. So what is that novelty of the Mishnah? This is just a subcategory of bar. Answers the Gemara, fine. Lo'ilim da'afkarinu, you were mafkrid. V'loy dami bar, it's not similar to bar. Because mal bar should contain chilasa asiyas l'nezik. A bar, when it's first created, it's destined to do damage. This, when it was first created, when the wall was built or the tree was planted, it wasn't created to do damage. It was a healthy wall or a healthy tree. So therefore, it wasn't destined to do damage. So it's not similar to bar. But an ox will prove it because an ox is not created to do damage. It's created to serve its owner. But therefore, it's very similar to the case of shar. But it's not. A shar keeps moving and doing damage. This fell into the street and it's lying in one place. Bar techir, so it's similar to bar. The chazar adin, you go back and forth. So this is a case that you learn it from two of the avos, bar and shar, to include the case of in case a person did not take down a shaky wall or a tree, a shaky tree that was destined to fall, and you're forewarned that it's going to fall into the street. If it falls into the street, it does damage. So because it's similar to shar and bar, you'll be obligated for any damages that happen. Then the Mishnah says, whenever these things happen, the mazik is obligated to pay. So the Gemara says, Chav hamazik, that's a strange word. Chayov hamazik meboile. It should say Chayov hamazik. Rabbi Yehuda Marav, Hai Tana Yerushalmi. The Tana that wrote this Mishnayos in Baba Kama is from Jerusalem. The Tana Lishna Kalila, they talk a little shorter. Instead of saying Chayav, they say Chav. So it's the language of the Mishnayos is not necessarily written by the same type of people in the same location. This Mishnayos in Baba Kama were written in Yerushalayim, and therefore you'll find strange languages. We already saw one of the strange languages that he uses, Mave, and Chav is another time. L'shalom tashnumei lezek. The Torah says that the obligation to pay is for the mazik to pay idios, the best of his fields. In case he's not paying cash, he has to pay for the damages with the best property. Best property of who? Taner Rabban, the rabbis taught, Meitiv Sadeu, Meitiv Karma Yisham. He should pay the best of his field, the best of his vineyard. Meitiv Sadeu Shanizik, or Meitiv Karma Shanizik. Divrei Rabbi Shmuel. With the way the Gemara understands is that if let's say the Nizik has a poor field and a rich field, right? So the victim has a poor field and a rich field. So the way the Gemara understands it right now is, according to Rabbi Shmuel, if your animal destroyed his poor field, you have to pay him the value of the value of his rich field. So you'll have to pay him the value that you damage with land similar to his rich field. Rabbi Kiva says, no, the Torah tells you that you collect from damages from the best of the mazik. The mazik's best. When you pay hegdish, you also have to pay the best. So the Gemara misunderstood Rabbi Shmuel. Rabbi Shmuel, let's understand Rabbi Shmuel. Achel shmeina, if the animal, let's say, ate, did shame, destroyed a rich part of the field. Mishalem shmeina, so you pay a rich part of the field. But achel kuchusha, if you ate a poor part of the field, in other words, let's say a part of the field that doesn't grow a lot of fruits, mishalem shmeina, you should pay a rich part of the field. That doesn't make sense. That's a little bit unfair. So why should you pay? Something more than what you actually destroyed? Because let's say a poor field is worth $1,000 and a rich field is worth $1,500. You have to pay the $1,500. It doesn't make sense, Rabbi Shmuel. Amar Rabbi Ida bar Avim. Rabbi Ida bar Avim tried to explain Rabbi Shmuel. Hacha b'mayaskinen. Here we're talking about kegoin she'achal aruga bein ha'arugais. He ate one row between many rows. And this field grows, rows that are full of fruit and rows that are not full of fruit. That's called chechusha, which is poor and rich. We don't know. We don't know if he ate a rich row or a poor row. So therefore, he pays a rich row. Because it's suffix. We don't know what the animal ate. Amar Rava said, Mal ilu yedit. This also doesn't make sense. Ilu yadin kechusha achal mishalem el kechusha. Ashel yadin kechusha achal ishmeina achal mishalem shmeina. If we knew for a fact that it ate a poor row of fruits, then of course you're paying the poor row. Now that you don't know, you should that if it ate a poor row or a rich row, you ask him to pay the rich row. Hamaitzi machavera olavaraya. The victim has to prove his losses in order to collect from the person that did the damage, the owner of the ox that did the damage. If you can't prove that you sustained such a damage, you're not supposed to collect more than what the possible loss could be. So that cannot be what Rabbi Shmuel said. So we're gonna just show it on the screen in another minute, and then we'll stop. The Gemara is going like this: that the Gemara is saying, Rabbi Shmuel, look at this case on the screen. The mazik has a good field, a number one field, and a number two field, and the nizik has a one field and then a two field. So according to Rabbi Shmuel, when you do damage, you have to pay the idius of the nizik, even if it's equal to the ziburis of the mazik, even if it's equal to the inferior field of the mazik, that's good enough, because to the nizik, this is a top tier field. So the mazik will have to pay his lower class field because it's equal to the idius of the nizik. That's according to Rabbi Shmuel. That's Rabbi Shmuel is weaker. Rabbi Akiva says no. The mazik has to pay his best field, which means the mazik will have to pay even better than what the nizik has. That's what Rabbi Shmuel. Ella Amar Rav Achabar Yankiv Hachmai Skinin who we're talking about. Kegon Shais Idis the nizik Kiziburis the mazik. This is what we're arguing about. Rabbi Shmuel Sovek bid the nizik shaymin. Rabbi Akiva Sova bid the mazik shaymin. And we're going to end off here. Rabbi Shmuel holds that when you assess the field, how much the mazik should pay, you look at the victim's fields, and with the victim's field, that's the field that the mazik has to pay. Rabbi Akiva says no. Rabbi Akiva goes much stricter. He holds bid the mazik shaymin. You go in the case of the mazik. you go look at the mazik, the one that did the damage. You look at his best field, even though it's worth so much more than the nizik's best field. The mazik will have to pay from his best field. That's the opinion of Rabbi Kiva. Rabbi Shmuel is more lenient. He says no, the mazik can get away with his inferior field because it's still equal to the superior field of the nizik. Okay, we'll stop right here. We'll continue this discussion tomorrow.